Welcome back to our studio broadcast. Now, it's clear that mobile is a powerful engine of economic growth, but exactly how significant is it? And how can mobile keep its contribution increasing as subscriber growth slows? Well, we'll be examining those questions and more in our next session called Measuring the Mobile Economy. Lending us their expertise today are Kalvin, Bahia, who is the Senior Economist at GSMA Intelligence, and Doyle Gallegos, who is the Lead ICT Policy Specialist for the World Bank. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Bit of a crazy morning out there, right?
Sure.
Indeed it is, yeah.
But you made it. Thank you very much. We're going to obviously talk about the new report that GSMA Intelligence has put together with help from other parties as well. The Mobile Economy Report, I think this is a report that GSMA Intelligence puts out or updates on a regular basis.
Yep, once a year, that's right, yep.
Every year, so this is the 2017 edition, and let's start, if we can, by looking at some of the headline statistics, because I was looking through the report and there are a number of very impressive figures that stand out, but it would be good to put a bit of background and a bit of flavour behind some of those. The report gives a kind of background into the fact that mobile is an engine of economic growth, and one of the headline figures that stood out for me, Kalvin, was the fact that mobile technology and services generates or contributes around $3.3 trillion of economic value on an annual basis, and that's 4.4% of the world's GDP. So that $3.3 trillion figures, give us a little bit of background, if you can, about how you calculate that figure, because it's a huge number.
No, sure, absolutely, yeah. So that figure can broadly be broken down into three constituent parts. So there's the element that we call the direct impact or value add. So for a lot of the mobile operators and other firms in the ecosystem who make handsets, the direct impact is effectively the value add they generate. So let's say you sold a phone for $100, that would be your revenue, but presumably you didn't make it on your own. You probably bought some parts from, equipment providers. Let's say you bought those for $50. Effectively, the value add that you're generating is the 100 minus 50, which is 50. So that's your value add. And we basically, using publicly available data on revenues and cost inputs, we estimate that sort of direct value add is equivalent to around $1 trillion in the year. And then the second part is what we call the indirect impact. So as you make that product, you obviously purchase inputs from other businesses. You might buy insurance or legal services. Your employees will earn wages, and they will then spend that on other sectors in the economy, and that stimulates other sectors as well. And then we estimate that to be around approximately 400 billion a year. Okay. And then the remaining amount, which is the majority, which I think is almost 1.9 trillion, it's what we call the productivity impact of mobile. So aside from the direct and indirect impact, me as a mobile user makes me much more productive than I would be if I didn't have a phone. So I can access information quickly using the mobile internet rather than going to a library. I can speak to my colleagues or anyone very quickly rather than if I didn't have the mobile, and that makes me, that increases my value add as an employee, or if I were to own a business, as a business each day. And then we estimate that, as I say, to be almost 1.9 trillion. So you put all those together, and that's how we come up with the 3.3 trillion figure.
Great, thanks for the explanation. Doyle, that is a huge number, whichever way you look at it. But I think what might be interesting is from your perspective, I'm sure you have experience in not just the mobile and technology sectors. Right. How is that as much of a significant contribution as it appears on paper? How does that compare to other industries? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it is significant. There's no doubt about it. 3.3 trillion on a percentage of GDP, that's approximately a little over 4%. And so relative to other industries, within itself, it's very significant. But again, it depends on how you measure it and what mobile means. Yep. Kalvin just explained a whole value chain of activities and agents that create this mobile ecosystem. We at the bank, we tend to look, and we focus on the poorest countries of the world, who are really struggling to get up the next rung. And so we see a much bigger significant impact within their context. Yep. We will see in some of our developing countries where that percentage could be upwards of 10, 15% of GDP, which makes it extremely significant and is the biggest reason for having mobile platforms drive economic development in these poorest countries.
Yeah, so there is quite a diversity, Kalvin, in terms of the contribution from developed and developing markets, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's reflected in a lot of the regional reports that we publish throughout the year. If
Yep.
you look at the analysis we do, for example, for sub-Saharan Africa, we find a bigger impact than you might do, say, in Europe or North America.
Yeah.
And it's for the exact reason
Yeah.
that Doyle mentioned. For example, in a lot of countries, access to the internet is effectively by mobile only. So all of those productivity impacts that you get from accessing the internet are driven solely by mobile, whereas in the countries like the UK or the US, you have fixed internet that's
Yep.
quite widespread as well.
Okay. 3.3 trillion in 2016. Have you done any forecasts as to how that will grow over the next few years?
Yep, so we forecast that going forwards to 2020 using GSMA intelligence forecasts and data from IMF and the likes of the World Bank. And we estimate that based on 2016 prices, it will increase from 3.3 trillion to $4.2 trillion. So as a proportion of GDP, that's gone from 4.4% to 4.9%.
Right, nearly 5%.
Almost, yeah.
Cool. Let's turn to another headline statistic, and this is there's a number around jobs that came out of the report. Tell us a little bit about. I saw a figure: nearly 30 million jobs created by the mobile ecosystem. Again, direct, indirect. How does that work?
So both again.
Yeah.
So you've got the direct element. So that is what you would expect. So mobile operators who employ, engineers, salespeople, anyone who a mobile operator employs, that's part of the direct jobs. Same thing for handset manufacturers and infrastructure providers. But then the indirect element, so what I mentioned first of all, which is when mobile operators or mobile ecosystem producers value add, they stimulate economic activity in other sectors, which creates employment opportunities there. And then that, I think that's sort of in the figure of around 17 million. So adding the two together, you get something, as you say, almost 30 million jobs.
And are those employment opportunities, do you think they're global, Doyle? I mean, I don't know whether there's a lot of mixture between developed and developing markets in those. More opportunity in developed markets, I would imagine.
Yes, we see firsthand. We work with these client governments day in, day out, and we see that many of them are leapfrogging the traditional legacy networks and going directly to mobile broadband. And so there we're really seeing the productivity enhancements. And we've experienced that up to a certain level, we see a dollar of investment has a much greater impact, obviously, in the lower economy, lower income economies. And so, but that you reach up to, takes you to the threshold. After that, you're pretty much even from developing to developed economies. But without a doubt, it's going to be the productivity gains that are going to really kick the economy going forward. And we just released our World Development Report last year, 2016, and we basically said, if governments are going to really earn the digital dividends that the digital technologies can provide, they've got to look at inclusion, efficiency, and innovation, which practically means a greater information base, information jobs, and information businesses.
Another headline statistic was around the contribution from general taxation that governments were able to collect. I saw 450 billion. What is that figure made up of? And when you say general taxation, obviously we should drill down a little bit further.
Yeah, sure. So there's different sort of parts of the tax base. So approximately half of that is around sales taxes. So most governments will levy some VAT. There's a generic VAT on most goods in many countries, but some countries also levy a mobile-specific VAT on both subscription and handsets. So about half of that 400 billion is accounted for by that. And then also you've got the mobile operators and the businesses paying corporation tax. That's another element. And then the employees who work for these companies obviously pay income and social security. So you've got half made up of sales tax and the other half roughly being made of the corporation taxes and the income taxes paid by employees.
Doyle, interested to get your perspective on how you think governments, or are they seeing the bigger picture with regards to the amount of revenue that they can generate from taxation and spectrum? Is this holding back growth, do you think? Because operators have always complained that they're taxed too highly.
Yeah. Well, the studies do indicate that in general the mobile industry is quite heavily taxed, more in some countries than others. And you have to look at perspective from a government policymaker and leader who basically has a balancing act.
Yep.
They want to take broadband to the village level as far as it can go. They know it needs to be affordable, which means low cost. So it means that they have to basically back off on some of the fees,
Yep.
excise taxes.
Yep.
But it's a real balancing act, like I say, and so they get it, they know what they want to do, but at the end, it becomes an allocation of, do I do this for my fiscal position or do I do this for the mobile industry? Unfortunately, the mobile industry has been the most credible, most transparent, and most easily had target to go up and help collect revenues. And our view is, let's put in place the guidelines to our government countries so that they can try to harmonize taxation across the industries so you don't penalize one versus the other and create market distortions.
Gentlemen, fascinating discussion. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Okay.
We will be revisiting the Mobile Economy Report every day this week on Mobile World Live TV.
Yeah.
So we look forward to that. But thank you to the two of you for coming in.
And thanks for the invitation. The GSMA is a great partner in the work we do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Justin.
Now, later on, we'll explore the possibilities of something called artificial intelligence, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But first, we'll catch up with Georgie Barrett. She's roaming Hall 3 for the weirdest, wildest and coolest gadgets that the exhibition has to display. Stick around. You're watching Mobile World Live TV.